Welcome everyone from Murphy to Manteo, the podcast of the Highway 64 project at UON University, collaboration between the Professional Writing and Rhetoric program and the Department of Environmental Studies. In the Highway 64 project, we explore North Carolina through the lens of culture, food, community, sustainability, and climate resiliency. Highway 64, our North Carolina Heritage Highway, stands as our metaphor for the diversity of peoples, places, and bioregions that is North Carolina. Join us as we travel the state, talk with interesting people, and explore thought-provoking ideas.
Hi, everyone. Welcome everybody from Murphy to Manteo to today's episode of the Highway 64 podcast. The Highway 64 project is a collaboration between UON University's Professional Writing Department and Environmental Studies Department to explore the local intricacies of culture and community along the road of Highway 64 in North Carolina. My name is Olivia, and I'm the producer of the podcast, and our guest for today is Nick Keller, Marketing and Communications Director of the Carolina Tiger Sanctuary. We'll be talking all things tigers, from their preservation, safety precautions, and the sanctuary's preparation for an international rescue of the tigers all the way from Honduras. So my first question for you today is, could you give the audience a quick summary of your mission statement and who Carolina Tiger Sanctuary really is?
Yes, Carolina Tiger Rescue, our mission is saving and protecting wildcats in captivity and in the wild. Obviously, we have a lot more rescues than wild cats here, as you may have noticed during your tour this last weekend. But, we are a sanctuary for animals that, really should be in the wild. A lot of the animals that we rescue are coming from positions of neglect, exploitation, and we're really a home for all animals, big and small, to give them a second chance to thrive.
Yeah, definitely. When we were on our tour, we were seeing one of the lions. I forget his name. Do you know his name? Roman. Yeah. We were right next to Roman, and there was a bunch of construction being done right next to him. And our tour guide was telling us how they're making the sanctuary for the tigers coming in from Honduras. But I didn't know. I initially thought that they're supposed to be there in September. So if you could just elaborate a little bit on the delay for that, but then also how come specifically North Carolina for the rehabilitation? Was it habitat or an economic drive? What sort of drove that in the first place?
Absolutely. With international rescues, they're incredibly complex. We're talking about two different governments that have their own specific permits. Since the tigers are coming off of an island, there is booking of boats. There's different airlines that we are going through. Obviously, of course, the animals need to have their own specific crates with all the permits and all of the considerations for, the EPA that come with transporting materials from country to country. With these sort of things, we really try to take our time because the animal welfare is the most important piece of the rescue. So ensuring that everything is aligned in place, transport is completely good to go, and that there's not going to be any unforeseen delays that would cause the animals to be in crates, particularly exposed to the element for long periods of time. We want to make sure that it's completely ready to go. I wouldn't say we're necessarily taking our time. There's a few small things that we're still addressing, but I think we're getting fairly close here, knock on wood, but we're really looking forward to having them, and of course having them come safely.
Yeah. I mean, in a situation like that, better safe than sorry,
Absolutely.
All circumstances. My next question is talking about sort of balancing the public access and education, for the kids. There was a lot of kids on our tours. For people who just want to come learn more about the tigers and all the animals in general versus their need for minimal stress and privacy. Because I know that the tour guide was talking about how some animals are on tour and off tour. And so if you could just talk a little bit about how you guys at CTR balance that.
Absolutely. Choice for all of the rescues at the sanctuary is really important to us. When animals do come over to the sanctuary, they go through a quarantine process. It gives us some time to get to know their personality, their comfort of being around people. But we really rarely ever have animals that go straight to being on tour because we want to make sure that these animals are comfortable being around larger groups of people, kids, a lot more noise. So, we take a very close look at the animals, how they're behaving around larger groups of people and staff. We give them an opportunity to adjust to sanctuary life, and then we may give them an opportunity to expose to some groups in trial without it being actual tours. And from there, if they're comfortable and they're social, particularly the animals that are on tour are pretty social. So not only I wouldn't say they like being around people, but they most certainly like the attention and it piques their curiosity. We advocate for that as much as we can. But that being said, the way that we build our enclosures, they're very deep. So if one of our animals doesn't feel like engaging with the tour, we don't prompt the animal to come to the tour fence. We basically just tell groups, hey, Naveen or Roman, is wanting some privacy today. So, maybe next time you'll get to see him and we don't force those animals in that dynamic.
Yeah, definitely. The quarantine process, when
Mhm.
they initially come, I remember the tour guide was saying something about one of the animals like loved this one specific song now whenever they heard it because they're playing like talk radio over and over again to
Yep.
sort of get the animals used to like human voices and stuff. What would you say is the usual period, that they're in quarantine, or does it usually like vary by animal?
It varies. Typically, it's a month. Quarantine is important for several different reasons. First of all, we want to make sure that they're not bringing any communicable diseases into the sanctuary. It also gives us easy access to the animals for all of our veterinary checkups, to ensure that they're healthy and that they are also given an environment that's pretty quiet, and pretty easy for them to explore, just to ensure that their transition is a little bit more smooth. Because some animals, particularly we had 6 red foxes come, their first exposure to solid ground was the quarantine facility because they were in wire cages. So quarantine alone for a lot of our rescues actually is a huge improvement over their previous circumstances, but it's a good buffer zone for them. The animal you're referring to is Bosley. We played NPR talk radio for him. He is one of the few rare examples of an animal that actually did come from the wild. He came from Washington State. Unfortunately, he was getting into people's yards and I believe their trash. And unfortunately, in those situations where they're habitualized to a community, the animal services there do have to find a new home for them that's outside of the state. So with that being said, him being a wild cougar, we wanted to help him transition and habitualize to the staff and everyone who would be taking care of him. But we also wanted to appreciate that he's wild and give him that privacy too.
Yeah, definitely. And like you were saying too, this is like their second chance at life. So even though it's like different from like the foxes, like you said before, environment, it's like a buffer zone. So that's great. Switching gears back to the tigers from Honduras, because I know that we read an article, like I said, in September when we first started researching the Carolina Tiger Sanctuary about the Honduras international rescue. So what does this whole process mean for the Carolina Tiger Sanctuary? And do you guys feel like it sort of advances the nonprofit's name as a sanctuary in general? Because I know you guys have, I forget what the exact name of the global certification is, but just in general, how do you feel about it?
Yeah. So it's, Big Cat Sanctuary Alliance is one of the accreditations we have. It connects a lot of the different sanctuaries throughout the U.S. That are accredited. And we also have GFAS accreditation as well. So that's the Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries. Those are really some of the highest accreditations you can actually have as an animal sanctuary as far as care, prioritizing animal welfare. The Honduras rescue alone is a really good indication that we as a facility in Turpentine Creek, the other BCSA facility, have come far along enough over several decades to be able to coordinate and facilitate an international rescue that's really complex. So, I would say in the early days, particularly, a lot of the rescues that we were conducting were on a national scale. But, we had found out that these tigers were needing a new home. The current facility hasn't really felt like they could keep up to the standards they're wanting for the animals. So they had reached out to the BCSA specifically, and we told them that we would be able to help facilitate, get the 5 tigers to a new home. And Turpentine Creek in Arkansas is taking 3 lions as well.
Wow, that's so cool. My last question is, because I know that Carolina Tiger Sanctuary is volunteer-based, always looking for new volunteers. They were emphasizing on the tour. So how would you say that visitors to your conservatory can help protect tiger habitats or support sustainable conservation practices, not just for tigers, but wildlife in general, I guess?
Absolutely. I think a lot of it comes down to education. For example, Halloween just passed, and we were sharing a lot of information about palm oil. Palm oil specifically, its production in South Asia causes a massive amount of deforestation. I would definitely recommend looking up videos of the plantations. They just go on and on and for miles. And it decimates habitats, obviously for tigers, but also for the animals that the tigers prey on and the animals that also keep a healthy ecosystem going. So I would definitely recommend looking into sustainable products that use either sustainably sourced or no palm oil whatsoever. So that is one of the biggest ways you can make an impact as a consumer. There are also quite a few, they're not always The same, there's some facilities that actually do a pretty good job at prioritizing animal welfare, but there are some facilities out there, particularly the ones that used to do cub petting and do photo opportunities, that will prioritize profit over the animal's welfare, particularly the younger animals. They end up spending a lot of time away from their mother at a key point in development. So that's very a very challenging issue that fortunately a lot of regulation has improved that over the years with the Big Cat Public Safety Act. I think one final thing that comes to mind is traveling circuses. There are some that use tigers in their performance, typically in order to get those tigers, and white tigers particularly, able to do those tricks. They use a lot of negative reinforcement. So, that's kind of more of a punishment-based practice. Some of the animals aren't necessarily kept in the best of circumstances. They're kept in smaller enclosures. Obviously, they're traveling a lot, which is very stressful for them. So that's one thing to consider. I think nowadays, one of the better ways you can speak is through your dollar by, participating or giving money to these organizations, but also keeping in mind what you can do as a consumer, on a global level.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I remember because one of the white tigers, I forget the name, but the one that's more striped, and it was declawed. Yes. Yeah. They were talking about, how he was in magic shows previously. Were a lot of them in magic shows, or was it just Saber?
That is a great question. To my recollection, I think it was just Saber. But yeah, he was used as an early age in a magic show. And they were, I guess, under the assumption that declawing him and defanging him would make him safer. But a tiger is never safe. They're very powerful animals.
Yeah, that's what they kept reiterating on the tour. Like, if there was a kid running and the tour guide was like, remember, like, they are wild animals. Like, they hear all sounds very, intuitively. So keep that in mind. Those are pretty much all of our questions for today. So thank you so much for taking the time to hop on and chat, not only with us, but the rest of the Elon community, about a nonprofit that's working so hard to protect the lives of these animals who were given a second chance at CTR. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe, and always feel free to leave us an email with any feedback.
Thank you again for joining us for the From Murphy to Manteo podcast. Be sure and check out our website at highway64.net and follow our podcast on YouTube and Spotify. If you have questions or ideas for folks who might want to host on the podcast, you can email us at highway64@gmail.com. Thank you.